Hello everyone, welcome to the webcast. My name is Christine Dursey Davis. I'm the Executive Director of the Ohio chapter of APA and Chair of the New Urbanism Division, and I'm your webcast moderator. Today is Friday, April 22nd, and we will hear the presentation, Applications in Transit Planning. For technical help during today's webcast, you can type your questions in the chat box found in the webcast toolbar, or you can call the 1-800 number that's shown on the screen here. And for your content questions related to the presentation, you can type those in the questions box in your webinar toolbar, and please specify which speaker you would like to answer the question, and we will answer those at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. On your screen is a list of the 2016 sponsoring chapters and divisions. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making these webcasts possible and free to their members. Today's webcast in particular is sponsored by the Transportation Planning Division. To learn more about this division, just visit planning.org/division/transportation. You can learn about all our divisions by just visiting planning.org/divisions. On your screen is a list of our upcoming webcasts. To register for these, just visit our webcast webpage at ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast. And to log your CM credits for attending today's webcast, just head over to planning.org and log into your MyAPA account. And then under the CM log, you can just select to search for CM activities. And then you can either put in the event number or the title of today's webcast, both of which are found, again, on our webcast webpage, ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast. Now, to note, this webcast has not yet been approved for CM credits. We're having some trouble on the back end getting some logistics sorted out. So when the session is approved, I will email everyone to let them know that they can go and log their credits. Like us on Facebook, Planning Webcast Series, to receive up-to-date information on our events and things like this, where I'll post when the session is approved for CM credit. So go ahead and like us on Facebook. And we are recording today's webcast, and it will be available on our YouTube channel. Just search Planning Webcast on YouTube. Or you can get a PDF of our PowerPoint, which is available, again, on our webcast webpage, ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast. All right, I'd now like to introduce today's speakers, and we can get started. Our first speaker is Tom Marchwinski. Tom is currently the Deputy Director of Market Analysis, Research, and Fair Policy for Metro North Railroad, which is part of the MTA of New York. He had 24 years of experience at New Jersey Transit, a multimodal transit agency that covers the entire state of New Jersey and operates service in 3 states. The agency operates local bus, express bus, light rail, commuter rail, and contracted ferry service. While there, he was in charge of market research and ridership forecasting for over $5 billion in new transit projects, ranging from new light rail lines, commuter rail extensions, and bus priority treatments. He also has been involved in the development of fair policy and ridership initiatives at both agencies. He's worked for a private consulting company as well as at a state DOT. He has a total of 35 years of professional experience and has published a number of papers on various aspects of transit, including multimodal issues. And he is a member of APA and is AICP certified. Our second speaker today is Amber Blake. Amber holds a BA in Political Science from Villanova University and an MA in Community Environmental Planning from the University of Montana, Missoula, with professional positions from Seattle to Baltimore and over 10 years of experience in the transportation sector. As Director of Transportation and Sustainability at the City of Durango, she brings innovation and technical expertise that has defined the vision for Durango's multimodal transportation vision. Amber is the President of the Board of Directors for Colorado State Transit Association and holds board seats at the Southwest Transit Association and Bicycle Colorado. Amber was awarded the 2012 Transit Administrator and 2015 Colorado Transit Professional of the Year. Great. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Marchwinski, our first presenter. Tom.
You can hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My topic is the importance of multimodal transit connections and fare policy for regional transit, mobility, and equity. I know it's a mouthful, but it's going to talk about the different modes of transit, how they connect together, and how they can form a multimodal system with some information on how people make transfers and access to transit. And at the end, we'll talk about equity in transportation a little bit and some future trends. The importance of multimodal transit systems fare policy is to enhance regional mobility. That's the main focus. You have multiple transit modes, especially fixed guideways. We're going to show examples of systems with significant use of multiple transit modes and how they function as a system. Also talk about some fare policies that have been developed to encourage intermodal usage on systems. The data and the information will focus on the Northeast cities where we have surveys and real examples. That's where my area of expertise is. And we'll also talk about some upcoming changes with fare technology and census definitions. What is multimodal transit? Usually it's considered the individual transit modes which serve different types of service and technology, except for walking, which all transit customers must do. All other individual transit modes encompass multimodal transit. This includes auto, taxi, and also rideshare access to transit. As of now, there are over 40 metropolitan areas that now have multimodal transit. By this I mean includes bus transit plus at least one other transit mode, which is usually on its own fixed guideway for at least part of the trip. This includes various rail, commuter rail, light rail, as well as bus rapid transit systems. In addition, there are over 20 metropolitan areas that have at least two fixed guideway transit modes, usually two types of rail transit. So the point here is that more and more cities and metropolitan areas are building and implementing multimodal systems where you have more than one mode of transit. Access to transit can also take multiple forms. For larger metropolitan areas, you usually have more riders that use more than one transit mode for a trip, and we'll go through some examples of that. Just a brief overview of the types of transit modes so we're clear on definitions. Rapid transit is usually, these are all fixed guideways, a third rail, high capacity, grade separated system. Examples include New York City subway system, BART in San Francisco, WMATA in the Washington, D.C. area. Commuter rail is usually traditional railroad cars with partial grade separation and electric or diesel power. They typically serve long distance and have express service in many cases. Examples include NJ Transit, Metro North, the Chicago area Metro, and then newer systems that have been built in Salt Lake City, New Mexico, Seattle, and Dallas. Another one is light rail, which includes trolley and streetcar. These are medium capacity with some grade separation, but they also can mix in with traffic. There are multiple U.S. cities that have built light rail, especially since the mid-1980s, and that includes, and also are trolleys that have been built, like in Seattle and Tampa, or also existing historic trolley systems like in New Orleans and Boston. And then there are other fixed guideway transit modes that aren't as are used also, like bus rapid transit, which is relatively new, has its own right-of-way for at least part of the trip. It's medium capacity. Ferries, which also can operate at a longer short distance over the water, which they have their own right-of-way. And then BRT, or bus rapid transit, has been implemented in places like Pittsburgh and Los Angeles, and ferry systems are in the New York, New Jersey, Seattle, and Boston areas. Those are all examples throughout the country. So what exactly is fixed guideway? It's premium service, typically with the majority of the service on a dedicated right-of-way. Fixed guideway premium service attracts more choice riders who typically can drive and have access to a car. This compares to regular local bus transit, which in most cases the majority of riders do not have access to a car. Fixed guideway service is travel time and reliability and advantages versus local bus transit because of its own guideway removed from traffic. And the sense of a permanent facility attracts additional ridership and investment, especially transit-oriented development. because of the permanence of a fixed guideway facility. Fixed guideways represent a major capital investment, and over time, multimodal guideway networks have developed in the larger metro areas. As I indicated, we're now up to about 40. First thing I'm going to cover is access to transit, basically how riders travel to and from home to access transit modes. I'm going to talk about the New Jersey Transit Commuter Rail System, which carries about 150,000 trips a day. But despite that, only about 4.5% of the riders use some kind of transit mode to access the system. However, over half of these rail riders use another transit mode to get from the commuter rail train to their final destination. It's about 53,000 people. A lot of these are on the New York City subway system or the PATH, which is a rapid transit system operated by another agency. So overall, about 61% of these commuter rail riders make at least one part of their trip on connecting transit, i.e. they're multimodal, they're using more than one mode. Only a very small proportion of the riders on this system walk on both ends of the trip, which is unlike a traditional local bus where a majority of riders simply walk on both ends of the trip. As you can see, I'll show you the next table about access. This is showing over 22 years that access to the New Jersey Transit Commuter Rail System has remained relatively the same. The orange bar shows you that the amount of people driving and parking has remained just over 50%. The amount of people walking or biking is about a quarter. The only real change is the amount of dropped-off people has gone up, and the amount of people using buses or transit to access the system has gone up to about 6%. So you can see that's over a 22-year period, relatively stable of how people get to the station. And this just summarizes the commuter rail system, the different methods of transportation. The 52% they use transit only on the egress or to get to their job side. 4% are using transit on the origin side, and only 5% use transit on both ends, and 7% walk on both ends. Now, intermodal transit does vary. I'm also going to talk about Metro North, the second largest commuter rail system in the United States. And here, the amount of the multimodal usage, as an example, depends on the market and type of trip, as I'll show shortly. There's more park and ride and auto access for longer trips to the Manhattan CBD, but for intermediate and reverse commuters, these are people commuting from the city out to suburban job centers. These people are more transit dependent, have local lower incomes, and don't use drive access. And the importance of transfer in Manhattan, you've heard of Grand Central Terminal, about 36% of those riders who come in transfer to the subway there. This just shows an example of how you can break out markets. This is taken from an origin and destination survey in 2007. You can see the people who travel to Manhattan usually have the most available car, whereas you look at the reverse work travel, only about 27% of those people have access to a car. And you can see how the access modes vary considerably by market, from drive alone for travel to Manhattan to walking in subway or for intermediate and reverse travel. And then the other end of the trip, how they get to their destination. You can see walking is more on the reverse or intermediate travel, and walking subway on the Manhattan end. And the incomes, as you can see, are very variable also. Access mode varies depending on transit mode and location. I'll show you in a minute a slide that shows how the mode access varies by mode in New Jersey. Let me just go to that. Basically, these are done from ridership surveys over a 10-year period. Shows you that the auto is predominant on the commuter rail and the rapid transit. The Patco Rapid Transit is a rapid transit into Philadelphia and New Jersey. And then you can see express bus is only about 45% autos, more walk. And then the Hudson Bergen Light Rail line, which is a light rail line in Hudson County across from Manhattan, is mostly walk and transit access, and the park and ride is a lot lower. This just shows that the type of access really depends on the land use patterns that you have and the type of travel that you're making. You can see here, this is all in one state, there's significant differences in how people get to transit depending on the type of mode and the location you're in. Again, this shows that access to transit is not just one type of way, it's in many different methods. This is an example of a light rail in New Jersey. It's called the River Line. It goes between Trenton and Camden. This just shows you how access varies by station. The Trenton and Camden stations are in the middle of cities, smaller cities, And there you can see it's mostly walk and a lot of intermodal with bus or rail. Regional park rides are by definition more drive and park. You can see the 77% drive and park. And town center stations, which have been targeted for transit-oriented development, are kind of a mixture in between, with some park and ride, some walk, and some transit. And again, it shows the variation that happens even on one line. This line happens to be about 20, 30 miles long. Now I want to talk about the major intermodal terminals. You saw where people are going to the major cities. They're typically in the CBD or near the CBD. They typically have multiple transit modes and stations, and they facilitate transfer between multiple modes. That's a key thing for intermodal. You have to have locations where people can transfer and they make the transfer easy. These stations, all these destinations also typically have important destinations nearby. And what do I mean by an intermodal terminal? Examples include Grand Central Terminal in New York City, Los Angeles Union Station, and Washington Union Station. There are also newer intermodal terminals being built, including Denver Union Station, which will have, I believe, commuter rail, light rail, bus rapid transit, and local bus, and the Miami Intermodal Center near the Miami Airport, which has commuter rail, rapid transit, intercity rail, local bus, and other connections. So these are examples of new intermodal centers that are being built to kind of show where the systems can come together. I'll also show an exhibit of Hoboken Terminal, New Jersey, which actually has 5 transit modes: commuter rail, light rail, rapid transit, ferry, and local bus, but it's on the water. And this, and this is an example of Grand Central Terminal, obviously, as an intermodal center. You can see people here are going from the trains to different locations. And this is Hoboken Terminal for people who come in by commuter rail. You can see where they go. It's like 8 different modes they can take here. They can take 2 different, what are called path lines. They can take a ferry. You see the orange, 20%. They can walk, or they can take light rail. So again, this is an example of intermodal in this station where one system you can transfer to about 6 different systems, and people do that, and they take advantage of that. The next area I want to just briefly go a little bit is fare policy and multimodal transit, because there have been some changes to encourage multimodal with fare policy. Originally, most transit agencies were private companies with separate fare policies. Most multimodal trips had to pay 2 separate or multiple fares. Public agencies took over in the 1960s through the 80s, and in addition, newer transit systems, particularly in the South and West, were public agencies from the start when they built new rail and light rail systems. Public agencies started to integrate some fares between modes, especially rail and bus, with what are called feeder bus fares or uni tickets, where the one ticket could be used on both. Legacy commuter rail systems, however, remain with distance-based fares and steep discounts for multi-ride monthly tickets. I'll give you some examples of how fares have changed over the years. Metro North in suburban New York and Connecticut pioneered lower fares for certain markets like reverse and suburb-to-suburb commuters. They gave a larger discount on rail fares to non-Manhattan locations to encourage travel for people from the city, especially the Bronx, the Greenwich, Stamford, and White Plains. These are all suburban office centers near rail stations. This fare policy change resulted in a large ridership increase, which I'll show you in about 2 minutes. And also, these riders now account for 11% of the railroad's ridership. In the 1990s, New York City Transit Authority eliminated the 2-zone transit trips using both subway and bus with the new technology stored value cards. Because of this method, instead of having to take 2 separate fares, you can now pay 1 fare for using both bus and the subway. This led to a large increase in ridership as a result of the 50% decrease in fare, and you must use the combined ticket within 2 hours for the free transfer. This is the Metro North lowering of the fares. It was in the 1980s. It was targeted. There's an increased ridership by 127% since 1990. It resulted in market shares for rail between 11 to 43%, depending on the market, which is very high for a suburban market, mainly out to office locations that developed around train centers and train stations in suburban Connecticut and New York. This just gives an example of how different the fares can be. This is the same station, White Plains to Grand Central in Manhattan, is $259. But going to the Bronx, even though it's only a couple of miles short, is only $75 a month. A big differential was given to encourage that kind of transit trip. Also on the weekly, you can see a difference between $83 and $23. And then on the other one, Fordham to Stamford, again, $300 for a monthly ticket. These are current prices. To Grand Central Terminal, only $122 for a monthly from the Bronx to Stamford. And the ridership results were pretty significant. You see, this shows the change in AM peak ridership reverse commute to Stamford, White Plains, and Greenwich since the beginning of Metro North, and since the beginning of 1990 when some of these fare policies were instituted. Ridership, you can see, grow between 255 to 155%. There are now between 3,000 and 5,000 people commuting to each of these locations. And again, part of this was because of the fare policy being lower to encourage this kind of trip. Again, this is an example of the Metro card, which is used for the technology right now by the New York City Transit Authority to get bus and subway trips on one card. Next, I'd like to go briefly into future trends in intermodal transit and fare policy. With new technologies, will allow the ability to customize fares for markets by time period and encourage more intermodal transfers. A number of transit agencies now have mobile ticketing via cell phone apps, and as that continues, there'll be more and more ways to encourage multimodalism by targeting fares to specific markets. A recent AFTA report also indicates that ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft can aid transit by making connections for the last mile from transit to final destinations. And again, this is relatively new because they are taking travelers, but the AFTA study found that the majority of the ride-sharing trips do not compete with transit. They're on weekends and especially after 8 p.m. at night when transit services are reduced and not as competitive. This kind of indicates that these new ride-sharing services can actually extend the reach of transit, especially through the last mile to get to your final destination. The other trend is region-wide transit tickets are becoming acceptable on multiple modes and carriers are ideal for encouraging multimodal trips. Examples of this include the Clipper card in the San Francisco Bay Area and the London Oyster card. As technology changes, the ability to use one card is the gold standard, so to speak, to get a region to have just one ticket type or medium that can, whether it's on cell phone or other modes, to be able to transfer easily between transit modes. The other issue that's becoming important is equity in transportation fares, which I'll get to. Recent studies show that housing and transportation costs should be no more than 45% of household income. Many low-income riders have had a hard time paying for transit with the trend in equity for transportation fares. Some agencies like Seattle King County Transit have been implementing use of half fare for qualifying low-income families that can document their income. This is to give them a discount because they can't really afford to use the transit, and the fares actually limit their mobility. Exhibit 9 shows an example of how to calculate the appropriate cost of transportation and housing. What is the right amount to pay for commutation? The Center for Neighborhood Transit, CNT, has developed this methodology, recommends that a combination of 45% of housing costs, household costs be for housing and transportation, with transportation being 15% of that. They've done an affordability index, and I've just given an example where the housing costs maybe are $20,000 a year. That could be rent or mortgage payments. Transit fares, if you're paying about $200 a month, would be $2,400. And if you have two cars, the cost to own, maintain, and operate cars about $7,400, I estimate. You add that all up, and with two cars, you need $82,900 in household income to meet the affordability index. If you only have one car, that goes down to $66,000. Again, the saving of a car by being near transit can really make a big difference to a household budget, is what this is saying. Other trends of self-driving cars, are they transitive linked in platoons as some companies are researching to have in the future? That's a real unknown how much self-driving cars are going to start affecting transit and other issues. There'll be a possibility of zero-car auto occupancy, which can lower regional car occupancy. And the last thing I have is a thing that the census is going to do, which will help planners There's a change in the census definitions of transit. I was involved with FTA and the census to help define some of that, and they tested this, and starting in 2018, light rail will finally be a mode in the American Community Surveys that are taken by the Census Bureau. As of now, light rail is not in, and we've seen that because of that, many people check other, which means they're not considered part of transit. So this will actually, I think, increase transit ridership a little bit because of the definitional not being in the census. Also, railroad will be redefined to include intercity rail, and that will indicate the real set of transit. So with that, I'd like to end my presentation.
Thank you, Tom.
Yes.
So my name is Amber Blake, and I'm your second speaker today. And today, my presentation will focus on mode shift in action. Today, we'll be looking at ways in which multimodal transportation planning can engage and educate the community to create a comprehensive implementation-focused plan and the development of incentive programs that will encourage mode shift. So I'll look at some of the things that we've done here in Durango and our approach to implementation-focused planning and our extremely successful incentive program that gets people out of their cars and into more sustainable modes of transportation. So in order to take it to the streets and get people to try other modes of transportation, it takes a lot of people from many sectors to make it happen. So we're going to look at why it's important, how we do it, the impacts that it has, and then look at ways that you can actually implement this. So why is it important? It's very important for us as planners to ask the questions, where we are now, where do we want to be? Where do we want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 30 years? And we do this through our long-range planning process, but that process is really difficult for most of the general public to grasp and engage in. So it's our job to be proactive. So this diagram here on the screen, I think, really helps us understand why it's important for us to ask these questions and to constantly question how we run our process so we can be more effective. So if we're proactive, we have a circle of influence that's much larger than if we're reactive. So as a single planner in an office or a team of planners in one agency, our circle of influence is one size. Whereas if we coordinate and engage and work with other agencies and communities and community foundations and businesses, our circle of influence, by being proactive, can increase to a much larger scale. So you're a planner, or you're not. I'm not sure who's out there. But those questions that I just referred to that we need to constantly ask ourselves is, what's the purpose of this plan? What's the purpose of this outreach effort? And then what's in it for our participants? Why do they want to participate, one, and why is it important for them to participate? So as you're continually asking yourself these questions, you're helping inform yourself on whether or not what you're doing is effective. And if there's ways for you to change how you run your processes that will be more effective. So we have agency side, and then we have the public side. And when you're looking from an agency's perspective, you want to look at the planning piece. So it's the where you are now and where you want to be. It's what are the needs for your community? What are your current needs? What are your needs in the future? And what are the needs that you may have that you haven't really thought about? So if growth happens in a certain area of your community that you aren't expecting now, what could the impacts be on your transportation system, on land use, on the quality of life for your community? If we have a changing demographic from neighborhood to neighborhood, are our services actually meeting the needs of the future demographics for this neighborhood? And then how are we going to fund the expanded service? How are we going to fund the multimodal improvements, the complete streets, the redesign, the connectivity projects when we have new development, or retrofitting the streets that we currently have that don't meet our standards? So you are an agency. Let's say you work for local government. You're a planning department. What other agencies do you need to be involved with? Who needs to be at your table when you're running this process? Do you need your State Department of Transportation? Do you need your transit agency if it's outside of your municipality? Do you need people from public health? Do you need the educational institutions involved? So asking yourself who needs to be participating in this process will also help make a more robust engagement process and plan, and in turn, implemented project for your community. So we're going to repeat this project. It's like being a hamster on a hamster wheel. Oops. And then, sorry. We are also going to go, in terms of public, we have to prepare the public. Do they know how to work the process? Do they know how to provide us the input that we need? So there's two pieces in working with the public. Here's the carrot, this is what's in it for you. And then here's the education piece behind it, so that when you take the time to actually engage in our processes, you can be effective. So if the person from the public doesn't understand the jurisdictional boundaries or the funding mechanisms or really how long the planning to implementation process actually takes, then when they're saying comments, at times it's complaints. Well, why can't, I want you to do this, and you say, well, I can't do that. As soon as you say it's not possible, they shut off, so all they hear is no. So we've got to figure out how to help them understand that we're trying to get to yes, but we need their help. And then finally, participating. Everybody needs a seat at the table, so how can we get them there? And how can we build specific relationships where our circle of influence is much greater and we can be more effective at this process? So the key is engagement on all levels by all stakeholders and making sure that we can all use our time wisely and our input counts. So now I'd like to look at the city of Durango. So the framework from which we are looking at this is rural transportation. We are a city of about 1,700 people in a county that has 54,000. So in the grand scheme of things, that's very rural. The city of Durango created their multimodal programs in 2009. And by 2012, there was an adopted implementation-focused multimodal master plan. And this plan included 75 public meetings. It was conducted and written by staff. And the community created that vision. So we have a lot of buy-in. And due to the way that we wrote this plan and engaged the community, it's helped us succeed with funding projects and getting things on the ground. Our transit agency, Durango Transit, was the Colorado Medium-Sized Transit Agency of the Year in 2013. Looking at the ACS data, we have about a 10% mode share. That's non-motorized transportation. We're a gold-level bicycle-friendly community, and again, our community is very engaged, as is the business sector. And as all of you know, and especially here in Durango, transportation is directly linked with a variety of issues that we're facing, including commuting costs, land use, development, health, and environmental concerns. We have pretty significant issues with something that Tom was talking about in terms of the cost of housing and transportation, the cost of living. When you look at Durango, we fall more than 50% into that area where we do not have an equitable makeup of costs for housing and transportation versus what you make. So we have multiple ways to impact travel behavior and mode usage as the demand on the transportation system changes. So this comes with population growth, new development, and the increasing vehicle miles traveled. So how can we extend the life of our roadway system, improve quality of life, continue to have good air quality, and a great community by shifting people out of their cars onto transit, their bikes, busing, carpooling, etc. So the way that we look at this is transportation demand management. And the city of Durango has set up our department so that our responsibility for our department is bicycle and pedestrian programs, transit service, parking, and then sustainability on top of that. And when you look at this Venn diagram, I think what's really interesting is if you make a change in the parking program, or if you make a change in the transit system, that circle is going to shift. So the star in the middle, which is truly transportation demand management as we look at it, will change. So you can make that space larger or smaller. And if you make too big of a shift, it can have a large impact, and that impact could be detrimental. But you can make a small shift, and it could be a very beneficial impact. So plan for the people. This is how we look at transportation planning. As a human being, you need mobility. And one of the things that many people don't think about is the fact that they wake up every day and they need to go somewhere. That somewhere could be work, school, that somewhere could even be within their house. But you have to have mobility options. So you need to get from point A to point B. And frequently, this piece is not at the forefront of people's minds. So we wanted to plan for the people, for our future, so that no matter who lives here and what their mobility is, they can get around. In creating our plan, we looked at these areas: data collection, our community rota vision and policy statement, and then those 75 public meetings, which were amazing because we, with our community of 17,000, would have anywhere between 50 and 150 people at these meetings. And they were excited about it, and they still are, which is the best part. So the vision of Durango's multimodal transportation master plan is to create a fully connected transportation network that provides for outstanding transit, walking, and bicycling in our community. And my favorite part of the process is the vision and how we achieve it. So it states in the plan that a middle school age child will be able to access transit, walk, or bike independently throughout the city of Durango and its environs. That's by themselves. So when you close your eyes, or maybe you don't even have to, you can see that 12-year-old kid. Are you comfortable saying, sure, Austin, you can go from school to home, pick up your stuff for soccer practice, meet me at work, and then we'll go to soccer together? I know for most parents, they wouldn't be comfortable with that, at least in 2012 when we wrote the plan, but today. And so if we can actually implement this plan and achieve our vision, then we'll be able to say, yeah, go ahead, jump on your bike, jump on the bus, and I'll meet you later, and we know that you're going to be safe. So, or at least safe on the system and its connectedness. So how are we trying to lead the way? For our community, we're looking at coordination. I'm going to review our Way to Go Club and a little bit on our integrated parking program, and then our partnerships. So when we look at integrated parking program, to fund our transit system, our parking meters, revenues, fees, and fines pay for transit. So we wanted to make sure that the parking program was integrated not only with the transit system, but with our other multimodal options, because when we get people out of their cars, they're no longer going to be parking, so our revenues might drop. And that's fine, and there's a benefit to it, but we have to maintain that balance. And then we are finding ways to integrate our parking permitting program with transit. So you can buy a parking pass with a transit pass, and you get some savings. And really in terms of coordination, this is one of the big pieces to be successful. So within our organizational structure, we have many departmental teams. So it's exciting for us to know that we can have a seat at the table during the development review process as the transit agency. And we look at those plans at the front end. We can get our comments in. We can say, hey, we're planning a service expansion, or maybe the developer says, I'm doing a transit-oriented development, and I want transit here, but I'm not putting anything in there about how I'm going to help ensure that that system or that service gets expanded and extended to that area. So it allows us to create partnerships. It allows us to work with the developer for potential financial assistance in making sure that that happens. And then coordinating with our state and regional partners, so working with the health and human service providers, working with the Colorado Department of Transportation, ensuring that we have these working relationships because our buses run on the state highway system, and our buses transport, about 600,000 people a year. And for 17,000 population, that's pretty good. And then again, we also look at coordinating with our service providers that come in on a regional basis, as well as the inner city bus that runs through the Durango Transit Center. One of the other things that we do or have done are transit surveys. So Tom talked a lot about his surveying and data collection, and I can't express the importance, and I don't think it matters what size of a community you're from, but having the data to back up your needs. Our most recent ridership survey showed that we have a 76% transit-dependent population. So if we have to look at cutting services, we know that this is going to impact not only the person riding the bus, but the person that employs that rider. And it's going to impact the quality of life for our community because people will not be able to live here if they don't have that transportation option. And their kids won't be able to make it to school because our school district is getting out of the transportation business, and we have many students that are riding public transit to access education. So that data has also really helped us in coordinating with our partners. So a little bit about the impact. So we have completed our planning process. We have our plan. And this plan has helped us to promote ridership, to promote our transit services, to increase mode shift. It has assisted us with working with developers to get that transit impact fee. And we are currently have an RFP issued for a nexus study, so we can do a city-wide fee for all development if the study supports it. And then our community partners, they provide funding to continue services and programs that we put on. And they help us with the engagement. So they will invite us to their staff meetings to come talk about travel training. What mode of transportation is good for you? And while we're there, we can say, hey, what needs do you see for our community in terms of the transportation system? And the people that know best about the needs of their neighborhoods or along their commute routes are the ones that are using them. So it's a really great way to gather data without actually going out there with your GPS unit and geocoding each space that is a missing link. So the photos here that I have on this slide are one of the projects that were identified in the master plan that we were able to put on the ground. It was a $500,000 project working with the train, Colorado Department of Transportation, the city, and numerous departments within the city. And it connects two of our transit routes. It connects the Animas River Trail, and it connects directly to our central business district. So this connection was a key last mile link that was missing. That was an obstacle to overcome for many of our riders and our entire community at large. And the project came in on time and under budget, and the train actually only closes for 2 weeks a year. So this was a very successful project, and we've taken bicycle and pedestrian counts and vehicle counts, and we can see that people's travel behavior, at least from how they get from point A to B, has changed since we've implemented the project. So in terms of the development review, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to make sure that we understand how important it is to get those stakeholders at the table at the beginning of the process. By having the experts, and let's say the head of your transit agency in your area, at the table to review the development that's proposed, if it will need transit service, which ideally most, if not all places, will be accessible by transit, then, or served by transit, having them at the table at the beginning can help you potentially get transit stops paid for. It can help you work with the developer. Maybe the way that they have it laid out might not be the best way to service it with transit. And then there's no surprises at the end. Because when you get through a long process of working with the developer for a new development, if they're planning on transit service and it hasn't been discussed, your transit agency may come up and say, I'm sorry, my budget won't afford it, and it's not in the service plan for our expansion for the next 12 years. That conversation could be very different if you brought them in at the conversation at the beginning. So the other piece of this process is that you can create a standard if you don't already have them, and then you can also create some sort of systematic approach so that it doesn't take as much time in the future to receive all of those comments and collaborate on these development reviews. I also would like to touch on long-range planning in our land use development codes. We know how important these plans and these code updates are for all of our communities. The long-range plan, and I think it's very important for the public to understand the process on transportation funding, because we constantly hear, government is so slow, why can't you get anything done fast, and why did you build a bridge to nowhere when you could have used that $12 million to complete all of these other projects? Little does the person that made that comment know that the funds that were used to build the bridge that doesn't connect to something yet was built because those funds were only eligible for that type of project, and the money was there, so you needed to strike when the iron was hot. So by engaging your community and helping them understand, especially the transportation planning process, how it works within an MPO, how it works within a transportation planning region, the funding sources available, the TIPs, the STIPs, the long-range, the 30-year long-range plan, and then down to those regional transit plans and statewide transit plans and how they all fit together. And that if you're not engaged in that process, when you come up with a really important project that you want to be the champion on as a member of the public, if it's not in there, it could be much more difficult to actually raise it up on those lists or ever get it done at all. So now it's time to play, right? We all love what we do, and in order to continue loving our jobs, we need to make it fun. So what we are working at is mode shift in action, and it's the events. It's the engagement with the community where you celebrate all of the great things we're doing. And this is something that most of us haven't made time for or figured out how to make it an integral part of our work plan. So what we're doing here in the city of Durango is Clean Commute Week. About 7 years ago, we took our annual Bike to Work Day and exploded it into a full week that we're calling Clean Commute Week. And it celebrates transit, walking, biking, carpooling, telecommuting, anything to get you out of that single occupant vehicle and give mode shift a try. We have a business commuter challenge all week where small, medium, large, and tiny businesses compete against each other of like-sized businesses for coveted trophies. And then they're celebrated in the media, and at the end of the week, Love Your Commute Party. Throughout the year, we have Commuters of the Month, and local businesses donate prizes that we can award them, and then one of those Commuters of the Month are selected as Commuter of the Year. We work very closely with our school district in our Safe Routes to School program. We have a couple of infrastructure projects. Within 2 years, we'll have approximately $1 million that will be used for infrastructure projects, and an additional maybe $20,000 that's for non-infrastructure and education and outreach. And through engaging with the schools, we were able to get into the curriculum, and now you can see that grassroots efforts where we have families on the weekend saying, hey, Mom, Dad, let's ride the trolley, let's take the bus downtown, or let's ride our bikes instead of driving to the farmer's market. And so you see that impact of the kids helping coach the parents towards mode shift. We have a program called Momentum, which is one of our education pieces. We do a monthly newsletter, as well as partnering with one of our local radio stations who do daily PSAs with did you knows and information about transportation and how you can use the system, as well as our travel training program, which is one-on-one or groups on one to explain how to take either that person that would be a choice rider on transit that might want to ride the bus but isn't quite sure how because it's a little bit scary or they don't understand the system, or if they want to try biking and they're not sure if they're going to be able to make it work. We'll work with them to just design commuting routes and explain the system, and if they need us to, we'll ride the bus with them to show them how to do it. And then there's my favorite piece, which is our Way to Go Club. So Durango's Sustainable Transportation Incentive Program, this idea came from when I was working up in Missoula, and they had a very similar program. But basically it's like an airline miles program, and you're rewarded for choosing a sustainable mode of transportation. So you log your trips, and you gain points, and then you can go to the store, and you can get prizes. And one of the great things is that in order to build this program, we were able to reach out to some really key sponsors, which are listed on under the prize item here. But these companies love the idea of sustainable transportation. And they have partnered with us and donated prizes and given us rates that we can afford to buy these amazing things, because people like free stuff. They'll work for free stuff, but when it's cool free stuff, you completely have them hooked. So these are some of the things that we're doing, and just to show you the impact that it's made, last year we had 560 members that made almost 60,000 sustainable trips, saving 830 plus miles from our roadways, and over almost 720,000 tons of CO2 emissions from our air. So it's feel good, and it builds partnerships, and it really builds that community piece, and now it's self-sustaining. So that is the end of my presentation, and we thank you all for attending, and now it's time for questions.
Okay, great. Thank you both. So folks, again, if you have questions, just type them in the questions box located in your GoToWebinar tool panel, and please be sure to mention which speaker you would like to have answer the question. Okay, let's get started. This first question is going to be for Tom.
Okay.
What is the role of biking in connecting to and between transit systems?
Okay, that varies by system. Traditionally, it's been a very small mode, but it's been increasing. In New York City, they have a city bike share program, and the biggest ridership is at the major transportation hubs because people get off trains and buses and then go to a bike. Also, I mentioned our River Line in New Jersey Transit. That the type of design of the actual transit vehicle can make a difference. So in that car, there were, I believe, 10 stations where you could hook a bike onto a station. So because of that, about 3% of the ridership on that line is people take a bike to the train, get on the train, ride the train, and get off the train. So that's a pretty significant amount. I know Caltrain actually runs several cars that have bike cars where they actually can put between 20 and 40 bikes per car for people commuting to Silicon Valley, reverse out of San Francisco. In the New York area, there are restrictions on bike during the peak period because there's so many people on the train, they just can't fit bikes, and so there you have to take a bike either to or from the station. So biking is becoming more important as a mode of access and to and from transit, but there are some limitations. Sometimes we have capacity constraints on the rail system, and the design of the car makes a difference.
Okay, thank you.
Hope that answered the question.
Yeah, for both of you, do you consider Uber and bike share as transit modes?
Oh, at the same time.
I partially consider Uber, but not totally. I know the recent APTA study found that it didn't really compete as much. I think it's more akin to a taxi. It does support transit for the last mile in a lot of applications. Bike share I do consider part of transit because it is a way to not use a car to get to or from transit.
And I would second what Tom says. Definitely bikes. I think that we're going to see Uber playing a larger role here in the future. I think it's fantastic fantastic that it helps with overcoming that last mile barrier. And again, it's still that vehicle piece, so I'd be on the fence of wanting to pull it into that mode share.
Okay. This is again for both of you, and I suppose if the two of you don't know, anyone else who's listening can type in. Supposedly Elon Musk was going to announce something about automated transit vehicles today. Did anyone see or hear what was announced?
I have not.
I hadn't heard anything.
No? Okay. Well, if anyone has, just go ahead and type it in, and I'll announce it if I see it come through. Okay. This one is for Amber. Have you had any success in explaining the concept of trade-offs before feedback part of the public meeting? Has this helped with citizens who hear no to at least understand that there are trade-offs?
Yes, we have had success with that, and I really think it's gone back. The success lies in taking that extremely confusing planning and funding process and how we have to make our projects come to fruition, and taking it down to the 5th grade level. And by saying that so there's that piece, so they understand that, and then the other success comes from showing and demonstrating to the community that we are getting to yes, and that we're moving forward. So constantly making sure that your successes are known and keeping the public engaged in the process. So when I have to say no to someone, I make sure to touch base with them again after the fact, maybe 3, 4, 5 months later, maybe even sooner, saying, hey, I didn't forget about this. I know we said no, but these are some of the pieces of the puzzle that may be coming together, or we're still working on it and it's on hold.
Great, thank you. All right, this one's for Tom. And this topic comes up here and again. For the smart cards, they typically require a linked bank account or credit card, internet access, computer, smartphone. But obviously not everyone has those things. We just had a webcast last week that we're discussing bike shares and how a lot of times you can only have a credit card to get to rent out a bike. But there's a large majority of populations that don't have a credit card or a smartphone or are able to do it through those methods. So how do you make the smart cards equitable for the bus riders that might not have a smartphone or a bank account, credit card?
Well, we still have the traditional methods of paying, either from a ticket vending machine or a ticket agent where you can buy tickets, or through employers. Sometimes they also provide transit. So I agree that the smartphone is a limitation for people who are unbanked and don't have access to credit cards. This issue has not yet been fully resolved. So that's why we continue to maintain other methods of payment in addition to the smartphones. There'll have to be some kind of convergence on that as that goes forward. I still believe going forward there'll be more just a smartphone as a technology to buy transit fares.
Great, thanks. For Amber, this question says, in our Safe Routes to School program, the biggest obstacle we faced is parents' concern with stranger danger and fear of abduction, even though we have had no reported such incident in years. Have you had this concern raised in Durango, and how have you responded?
So yes, we have had the concern with that, and I think we've addressed it in a number of different ways. The concern really came with like walking school buses, or parents that wanted to say, okay, well, I want to just let my kid ride their bike from home by themselves. And for the parents that had the kid that wanted to ride their bike by themselves, we could help them with what we call a kids route. We work with the police department to do increased police presence on those kids routes. We don't call them safe routes because then if something happens, it could be a liability issue. And then with the walking school buses, some people weren't comfortable with how big it is or how it would function. So we work with getting a number of parents together to run those school buses. And then the other thing that has been working very well is our walk and roll-a-thon and the bike and walk to school days. So really focusing on that one day and trying to get families as a whole if possible, to make that shift.
Okay, great. Thank you. Amber, again, what carbon neutral calculator do you use for the way to go trips?
So we use, we Googled it and it ended up being put into our system on the back end. I'm more than happy to send that information to whomever asked the question or to you, and you can post it. But I don't remember where we got it at this point in time. I couldn't give you the link.
Okay. And do you work with a company to manage the Way to Go initiative?
We do. We work with an amazing consulting firm named Parsis, and they're based out of Scottsdale, Arizona. They have been one of the best firms that I've ever worked with in my career, and have fabulous ideas, and they too are completely supportive of what we're doing with the Way to Go Club. And the way that we have the program set up, it is actually transferable to other locations. And we did use federal monies, as did Missoula for theirs, so it's not proprietary.
Great, thanks. For those who want more information, if you wouldn't mind just bombarding Amber's email, I think she'll be happy to get you more info and links, etc.
Yes, most definitely.
Thank you. This next question's for Tom.
Okay.
Is Metro North planning new or additional additions for increased reverse commutes and to support intra-city travel with the planned new stations?
The planned new station I think you're referring to are the 4 new stations in the Bronx as part of a new rail service that the New Haven line will go to Penn Station.
Yes.
So yes, at those stations we are planning to have both reverse commuters as well as traditional commute. The detailed operating plans have not been developed yet. They're still in the process of working on that, but there will be both traditional to the Manhattan CBD and reverse service. We actually operate today a significant amount of reverse service. I think it's like every 20 minutes. So we have enough capacity and enough service right now for our reverse commutes that we don't. It's not that easy to add reverse commute on the system because of the traditional commute being near capacity. So there are some ability to do that, but very limited. But the new service will have more service on that for the new Bronx stations.
Okay, thank you. And it looks like someone sent in a link. If you search the self-driving bus with, it looks like it might be something from Bloomberg.com. The link is pretty long. So if you just search Bloomberg and traffic with self-driving bus, you might get some more information on that release that happened today. It looks like that's all that we have for questions right now. So I guess we get to wrap up a little early on this Friday. Thanks to Amber Blake and Tom Marchwinski for speaking. Again, you can find anything you need regarding our future webcasts and YouTube channel and PDF copies at ohioplanning.org/planningwebcast. Again, please note that this session has not been approved yet for CM credits, but we will be emailing it out and putting it on our Facebook page when it is. So again, thanks to both of our speakers, and everyone have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next time.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.